What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And joining me today is columnist, cleveland.com, Jimmy Watkins. And Jimmy, we had another battle of the best in the Eastern Conference. Number one, number two, the Boston Celtics came into Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse and came away with a 112-105 victory. And I wrote about this in my preview article, Jimmy, but I wasn't putting too much stock into this game coming in. It was the third matchup of the season between the two teams, between the two juggernauts. Offensively, obviously, we understand that the Cavs are the number one offense in the Eastern Conference and in the NBA, actually, and the Boston Celtics are third in the NBA in offensive rating. So we know this game got off to a slow start. They combined for 8 points, I believe, in the first 5 minutes of the contest. And then the Boston Celtics kind of pulled away with it. And that kind of dug the Cavs their own hole that they weren't able to ever come back from. Jimmy, obviously a lot of different things to look at. This was a learning game, I feel, and I can describe it as for the Cavs. But what did you think about coming in? What did you think about coming away? And what do you think is the biggest area that the Cavs can learn from their loss tonight?
So coming in, as I mentioned last night, I was really interested to see the Porzingis, how the Cavs attacked and defended Porzingis. And I was more thinking of it from like the true stretch five perspective, like how did they which big man do they put on him? How do they defend him? And it actually turned out that they managed the defensive assignment of Kristaps Porzingis pretty well with a lot of different unusual defenders against him, both because of switching and because of a rough night for Evan Mobley, who wasn't out there as much as he usually is, and because of a healthy dose of zone. Okay, but what ended up being Kristaps Porzingis on the defensive end gave the Cavs all sorts of trouble at the rim. And here's what we're not going to do on this podcast. We are not going to overreact to one regular season game. We are not going to paint this kind of sloppy looking version of the Cavs as the team they are going to be going forward. We are not going to say that just because this is the first time we've seen them under Kenny play the fully healthy version of the Celtics, and it didn't go so well, particularly on offense. We're not going to write them off future playoff series. Okay? I've said all that. That being said, I got some playoff flashbacks at times watching this game. I mean, just like going through the box score. Donovan Mitchell, freaking outstanding tonight. I mean, 31, 10, and 6. Five turnovers, which was, of course, one of the only stats that he mentioned about himself tonight. That's how stars' brains work. But I mean, like I feel like if you watch the game, you understand what I say when I say, as incredible as that stat line is on 24 shots, by the way, 50% shooting. That doesn't tell the story of how excellent Donovan was at setting the tone. He just was playing with so much verve. He had some extra burst in passing lanes. He was flying all over the place. He had a little extra pep in his step all night. You could tell, and I think I caught him out of the corner of my eye talking to Darius as Darius was leaving the locker room after the game. I think Donovan said something to the effect of like, I really don't like losing to those guys. All right, so this game meant something to the Cavs. But look around Donovan, okay? Jared Allen, hats off. Jared Allen was freaking awesome tonight. 17 and 18, 6 offensive rebounds, patrolling the paint while dealing with a size deficit, and had a couple of really nice passing moments as well. I thought he acquitted himself very well. Sam Merrill, tip your cap. Made 3 threes. That's 12 made threes for Sam Merrill in the last 2 games. His previous 5, he made 10. Where else did it come from, man? I mean, Darius had a nice bounce back second half. I thought he was really playing with the right verve and picking his spots, picking the right matchups to attack in the second half. But man, he started slow. Maybe that had something to do with the fact that he got hit in the face again early in this game. I don't know. But that those moments, like one bad half will kill you against the Celtics. That's how good they are. Georges Niang, 1 for 3, made a couple free throws, 6 points, -12. I mean, the fouls, 5 fouls. The Celtics were going after him as often as they possibly could. Evan Mobley, your third All-Star. I think we'll probably have a separate conversation about Evan Mobley. But here's just to give you an idea. This is the fewest minutes that Evan Mobley has played in a game that was decided by single digits, other than the Miami Heat game on December 8th, during which he sprained his ankle. So Kenny Atkinson legitimately went away from Evan Mobley at times in this game. Kenny said after the game that, well, it was more about we wanted to get more spacing on the floor. And look, Jared Allen, also great. Let's tip our cap again. Jared Allen was great tonight. But it's unavoidable. Like, normally when the Cavs go one big, it's Evan Mobley, okay? So that tells you a little something. I just got a familiar feeling of Donovan Mitchell. Man, this guy is playing his heart out right now, and he needs a little bit more help.
And I don't think anybody's going to disagree with you on that one, Jimmy. But the fact is that he did have more help than he had last season, right? Darius Garland still was in 20 points. Jared Allen did put up the points that he needed. But it was the shots that they missed. Like, this has been one of the most efficient teams. They came in second in field goal percentage, best three-point percentage shooting team in the league. And tonight, they matched their lowest field goal percentage of the season, and they had their third worst three-point percent shooting night of the year. And when we talk about this, Jimmy, we also understand that the Cavs have won one game this entire year when they have shot below 30% from the field. And obviously, we understand that Donovan Mitchell against Boston Celtics, as you mentioned, they don't like losing to them. So he has a little bit extra burst. And that also started in the first quarter where he dunked on Kristaps Porzingis' head, put a little head top on him. And I know, like, that's in the very beginning of the game. And it doesn't have a whole lot to do with how the game panned out. But that was the energy boost that the Cavs needed. I mean, I believe it was either 6-6 or 4-4 or whatever it was at the time. And that got them kind of rolling again. It got them back on track, even if the Celtics went on their run. It was the energy portion of it. It woke up Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And obviously, Donovan has preached throughout this entire season that there have been different kinds of games where he's been able to get off the ball. He's been able to stay on the ball, pick his spots. And that's been the best attribute of Donovan Mitchell this season, is how he's been able to do that. And tonight, I feel like everybody knew coming in that Donovan just tears up the Boston Celtics. But you mentioned that the Boston Celtics were fully healthy. The Cavs, although without two rotation pieces, they were down 2 men. One of them being, as Jared Allen called him after the game, the Celtics killer, in Dean Wade. And Dean Wade is a guy that a lot of the fan base doesn't particularly have very much interest in, especially when we talk about the trade deadline coming up, and we'll probably end the podcast with that. But
I would say appreciation. They do not appreciate Dean Wade properly.
I that's the better wording. That's where I was going with that. Perfect, Jimmy. The Cavs are now 30-5 when Dean Wade plays. They're 10-5 when he does not. So if that doesn't show you the discrepancy, we know his box score stats. If you're a box score watcher, that does not depict exactly what Dean Wade does for this team. The defensive numbers speak to it. The overall numbers when he's off the floor also speak to it. So, Jimmy, the next portion of this is kind of something that you alluded to with Evan Mobley.
Can I say something real quick, though? I want to, if you want to say that, yes, the Cavs were not at full strength, I'll hear that. The court will allow that evidence. I agree. Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade are two instrumental pieces when you're trying to defend the Boston Celtics, who have a bunch of big ball handlers, particularly the two biggest, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who kind of had some awkward matchups tonight, right? Like Max Strus guarded a little bit everybody tonight, but he was on Tatum, he was on Brown. He got 2 quick fouls trying to guard Brown. Jaylen Brown started really hot, had the first 12 points for the Celtics. Karis LeVert guarded Jaylen Brown for a little bit. Evan Mobley was guarding Jason Tatum. I think that's a legitimate chess piece that they can deploy down the road, but neither here nor there. Defensively, I understand, but that's not why the Cavs lost this game, right? Like, they were still able to drag the Celtics down in the mud with them, even though they were having a tough shooting night. They just couldn't score enough. These are the 40-point quarter Cavs, the 50-point quarter Cavs. If you're the Dallas Mavericks, their best quarter was 31 points tonight. They scored how many points in the first quarter? 15 points in the first quarter. Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, underappreciated players, incredible defenders, not your offensive accentuators, right? Like Dean Wade, like a floor spacer, serviceable floor spacer, but he's gonna stand in the corner. And the Celtics have a way of making you play this brutish basketball that really just, it's what you got, right? On offense, they are predatory the way they hunt switches. They'll find you. If there's a weak point on the court, George Niang, he'll find you, and we're going to make you move your feet. George Niang was tap dancing out there a lot tonight, okay? He was trying, but there are limitations there. On defense, they did it with Sam Merrill, too, and he's an underrated defender, but he's undersized against a lot of these Celtics ball handlers, right? On defense, Celtics switch a lot because they have the personnel to do it, and that limits what you can do with your pretty flowy, cutting, passing offense. Like, and then to a certain extent, that's playoff basketball. Again, we're not saying that this game, should drain your hope against the Celtics in potential playoff series down the road. A lot of time between here and now, a lot of growth to be had between here and now. You can get healthier between here and now. Who knows? Chris might be on the phones right now figuring out a trade that the Cavs are going to make. Who knows? But it's a lot of mano-y-mano, and the Celtics have better, bigger, stronger monos.
And Jimmy, I think you make a good point when you talk about the defensive prowess that the Cavs showed tonight, obviously against a team that is also known for putting up big numbers. And the Cavs have gotten some backlash on having defensive slippage throughout the season. So I think it was a good point that the Cavs were able to still hold the Boston Celtics to 112 points, right? The other thing that I want to say on that topic is, I think on the other side of the coin is, you have to take advantage when you're able to have this kind of defensive showing against a team like the Boston Celtics, where Jason Tatum, 7 of 23, 30.4% from the field. Kristaps Porzingis, 7 of 20, 35% from the floor. Jrue Holiday, 1 of 6, 16.7%. Peyton Pritchard, 3 of 7, 42.9% from the field. Like, these are guys that are like used to shooting above their heads. Maybe Jason Tatum, not as much, because he's going to get his points how he gets his points. But the Cavs have to be able to take advantage of situations against not only the bad teams, but also the good teams. And I'm going to say this in the same sentence, in the same light, that the Cavs are 17-8 versus teams over 500. That's the second best in the NBA. So I think there's not, obviously we've talked with Kenny Atkinson about the narrative that they can't play as well against these lengthy, these better teams, these elite level teams, but they have showcased that they can defeat these teams that have had success throughout the year. New York, Philadelphia, well, not Philadelphia this season, but the point I'm trying to get to is they are not.
Okay, but there's a difference between teams over 500 and the best team, the teams that you're going to have to go through, okay? Kenny was talking about this before the game. Boston, they're 1-2 against now. OKC, they split with, and the loss was ugly and alarming, okay? The Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
Houston is, and I would characterize Houston as a step below those other two teams, though they are stacking regular season wins. They beat the Cavs twice, and those three teams in particular have next level size, positional size, and make some of these smaller Cavs guards work harder and on the other end can punish mismatches in a way that's again, that's playoff basketball. Like, I'm trying to think of a random above 500 team the Cavs would smack around. Let's pick a name out of a hat. Well, no, the Indiana Pacers have some size. Pick your let's say, can you help me, Ethan? Why am I not thinking of a random team right now?
I'm pulling up the standings right now. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
through them for you. I mean, when you talk about the West, like LA, I feel like the Lakers are a team that they have size, but the Cavs have had success against them this season. The Knicks are a team that they've had success against this season. I don't think they smacked them around, but they had success against them. The Milwaukee Bucks, both of those games they won against the Bucks, even though they were close, right? Orlando, obviously, we understand Orlando's situation with injuries. So I definitely think it's a difficult conversation in the context of what you're talking about, Jimmy, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I just think, like, there are nice wins, and then there are statement games in the regular season. Again, we're not investing too much into this one regular season game. This was a statement game. This is a TNT game where everyone was watching. And I think one of the takeaways is that the Cavs offense, as awesome as it has been for most of the season, when the Celtics are locked in and healthy, more work to be done. More work to be done.
100%. And the next portion that you alluded to earlier, Jimmy, is the Evan Mobley situation and how he's continuing and still coming back from that calf strain. And Kenny Atkinson mentioned it and kind of dodged the question that Chris asked him about his health, saying that everybody during this time is going through something. There's two sides again to this coin. I feel like, Jimmy, from the other podcast where there's two sides to everything, right? Evan Mobley last year had his breakout game against the Boston Celtics in Game 5. And that was when the entire world was like, oh, this guy could be good, could be something that we have to keep an eye on because of his offensive game. That didn't happen tonight. He was bad offensively tonight. Right? Evan Mobley was 3 of 14 from the field. He was 0 of 4 from deep. He was a -7 in the box score. He had just 7 points overall. And then he wasn't doing a whole lot in the rebounding category either. He had 5 rebounds, 3 on the offensive end. But I definitely think when it comes to Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell said it after the game, this is just one game. And they have both, Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell, have both had stinkers. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell referenced the game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and we know that matchups can play a factor in these kinds of things. Donovan, Lou Dort, Kristaps Porzingis, Evan Mobley. But obviously, we also have to take into account that the Boston Celtics did not have Kristaps Porzingis last year in the playoffs when they played. So I definitely think that's something to monitor going forward, especially if this is a matchup that we see in the playoffs and how Evan Mobley adapts to being guarded by somebody like Kristaps Porzingis, who can be out on the perimeter with him as well.
Once again, what we're not going to do is erase 49 games worth of progress. For the most part, 49 games worth of incredible progress from Evan Mobley. He's been so good, well-deserved all-star. The ceiling of this team has been reimagined as a result, okay? They've done a great job of empowering him, and he has made the most of that power. At the same time, they need more than this out of him to hang with this team. Okay, the Celtics did not play that well offensively tonight, and the Cavs still didn't have enough firepower to keep up with them. In a playoff series, you're not counting on your George Niang, Sam Merrills to keep you in it. You're counting on your Evan Mobleys, your Darius Garlands, your Donovan Mitchells. Okay, maybe your Jared Allen. I don't know. Cavs have this too big formula. Didn't look so hot on offense against the Celtics team, and yet the Celtics are now experimenting with the too big formula, which means that the Cavs might have to mesh. That's tough. That's really tough, man. I was pretty intrigued. Again, all the caveats. Calf injury. It has been 6 games, but calf injury. Okay, I'll hear you. I know calf injuries linger. It's, the Cavs are, they did beat the mess out of the Mavericks on Sunday, which offered all the starters a healthy rest. And now it's Tuesday, right? So I would think that everyone's pretty fresh right now. But again, calf injuries linger. I'll hear that out. At the same time, 6 games since, and it felt like we were starting to build upward momentum here, right? Like against the Mavericks, we saw the 3-point shot make a return. I've made the comment on this podcast before that when Evan first came back, he looked a little timid around the rim. I thought we were seeing fewer and fewer occurrences of that each game as he went on. And then tonight felt like a big fat regression. I was intrigued to hear basically every person we talked to tonight, which after a loss is fewer people. It was Kenny, Donovan Mitchell, and Evan Mobley. Basically, all of them chose
Jared Allen.
Allen. Who did I say?
Evan Mobley.
Sorry, Jared Allen. They were all asked questions about Evan Mobley because he didn't have a great game, right? And I was interested to see none of them really take the tough love approach, and all of them take the build him up approach. I'm not saying that's the right or wrong approach. I'm just saying that, like Kenny's saying, we need to find better ways to get Evan the ball, and we're not worried about this one game. We'll write it off. Well, it is one game against the one team that you are measuring yourself against in the Eastern Conference, and it is the first time this season under this iteration of your team that they've been whole, particularly in the front court, particularly with Kristaps Porzingis, the guy that Evan Mobley is going to be, if all goes according to plan, Evan Mobley is going to be seeing a lot of Kristaps Porzingis at the rim on both ends of the court in late May. Okay. Donovan Mitchell was, again, telling him, don't worry about it. All right. Everyone has bad games. He made some joke about, oh yeah, people get mad at you because if you have 50 points and you miss a free throw, you mess up their parlay. Ha 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 ha. Okay. But we're not really I thought that was really interesting. Jared Allen, kind of same idea. They all took the build him up approach. And I'm wondering, and this is maybe a little bit too big brained here, so stop me if I get there. But I wonder, so we know Evan Mobley to be more of a reserved fella, right? When he speaks to us, he's a quiet talker. He's becoming more demonstrative on the court, but he mostly lets his game do the talking. He's still very young, of course, 23 years old. I think that's part of the reason why they're taking this approach, by the way. They see it's all the progress that has been made, and they don't want to beat up on him too much because they want him to keep being aggressive and keep exploring what he can do on the court. But I think that the way people manage their teammates, and in Kenny's case, their players, tells you a lot about that player. So I think that them saying, Kenny kind of batting away, oh, whatever, one bad game, okay. It's kind of an important bad game if we're projecting for the future. But okay, Donovan Mitchell, same thing. Jared Allen, same thing. Don't worry about it. Just next, we'll get him next time. I think that tells me that they all still think that Evan needs his confidence built up a little bit. His rhythm got thrown off from the calf injury. He missed 4 games. He's been working it back up. Today he had a bad game, so they're trying to keep him pushing forward. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying that's the wrong way to do it. I'm just saying it's interesting that they've chosen that way to do it, because eventually these conversations are going to get much more direct, and the criticism is going to be harsher if Evan Mobley does something like this in the playoffs against the Celtics. At the end of the day, as we've said 1,000 times in this podcast, the Cavs championship window is open as wide as Evan Mobley can lift it, and tonight he didn't lift it very high. It's the regular season, so it doesn't matter. But and maybe that's the right response after a regular season game, right? Just say, let it roll off your back. We'll get them next time, and try to see what you can do better next time you see the Celtics. I just wanted to highlight that because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely correct. But I think we got to start having these hard conversations. And Jimmy, like we've been very praise heavy on this podcast, and rightfully so. They're 40-10, right? But like there are some difficult conversations that need to be had, and a couple of those come with Kenny Atkinson and some of the decisions that he's made over stretches against tougher teams and situations where he might be able to go to somewhere else. And we've talked about how he's just believe in the depth, like keep coming back to the depth, and he has
Celebrate it. Celebrate it, Ethan.
Celebrate it.
Pop bottles.
There you go.
Pop bottles for the depth.
Celebrate the depth, right? But when you keep talking about this and you keep saying, oh, we're going to do this in the playoffs, we're going to use our bench, we're going to use our rotation, we're going to play 10, 11, 12 deep in the playoffs. Show me. Like, if you're going to tell me that if George Niang, who we understand that this is the reasoning Kenny Atkinson goes with every time I ask this question to him about why George Niang continues to stay in the game, it's because of spacing. It's because he is a connector. It's because he is in the right places and at the right time and can make decisions and he's a leader and he's a great locker room guy and all of these things. The reality of it, if he's an offensive weapon, if he's supposed to be spacing floors, he's supposed to be shooting and making threes, and you tell me that he takes 3 shots in the entire game, he took the least amount of shots of any player that entered in the game today. And he also only had, let me look at this so I'm saying this correctly, 2 rebounds, right? You're the power forward. You're subbing in for Evan Mobley off the bench. You're the power forward trying to take up space, trying to guard Kristaps Porzingis, and you have 2
And by the way,
rebounds.
he's playing in really small lineups. We talked about this after the game, Ethan. He's playing with 3-guard lineups in many cases. We need the size to be grabbing rebounds in those lineups.
Correct. And you're talking about like, and that goes into the just the lineups, right? Like we talked about this, Jimmy. There was a lineup with Sam Merrill, Donovan Mitchell, or Sam Merrill, Darius Garland, Max Strus, and Ty Jerome. And you could switch in Max Strus with George Niang. There was more times on that where George Niang was out there. You can switch in Donovan and Darius if you want to. But the reality of the situation, if George Niang is not bringing what he is supposed to on both ends of the floor, especially because we understand that he is a liability on the defensive end, and he had 5 fouls. Like, I got to the point where I was like, all right, you're going to have to play Jalen Tyson. You're going to have to put him in the game. And then Kenny Atkinson just kept switching out Max Strus and George Niang. With Max Strus playing the 4, a lot of our listeners complain about Max playing the 3. So my question to Kenny Atkinson after the game was trying to get an answer about what continues to let him play George Niang in these situations when he's playing like this today. Other games, George Niang has been a savior of this team. In this particular game against this particular opponent, why not give Jalen Tyson any chance, any opportunity to show himself in a game against a team that you could see further down the line? His answer was blatantly, we thought about it. Okay, what does that mean? Like, we thought about it. Okay, do it. This is going back to what he has told us, Jimmy, on countless occasions. The depth, celebrate it. The depth. We're going to use 10, 11, 12 guys because we have them. And then going into what Jalen Tyson has been used for this season. Defense against bigger opponents. Defense against guarding the best player on the opposing team. I would have liked to see minutes of him guarding Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, right? And then also, and even if you want to keep George Niang on the floor for those minutes, like have him play the 3, have him play the 4, and have George Niang play the 3, whatever. But the rebounding aspect is something that Jalen Tyson has translated from college to the NBA, and that's the biggest portion of it. They need those rebounds, and obviously we're not talking about the rebound discrepancy because it wasn't that big. The Cavs lost the rebounding battle 53-51, the offensive boards battle 15-14, but like it felt much different than it looked, than the stats proclaim, right? So I just think there's these tougher conversations when you're saying we want to go with these guys that have been there longer. We want to go with these guys that have been in these situations. And obviously that's a portion of the reason that the Cavs went and got George Niang in the first place. But if you're going to want to keep Jalen Tyson, you have to show the Cavs and the organization why he's useful in these situations.
Yeah, we've seen what George Niang looks like in those big games that he's played in, right? Since he's been here, he was not good. He fell out of the rotation last year during the postseason. To your point about what Kenny says about celebrating depth and what he does, there's a pretty distinct difference, right? Actions over words. We always say that. It's very easy when you're motoring through. The Cavs are, at this point, I think we can say they're at least in the regular season, they are a cut above 70% of the league, 80% of the league. We can keep going higher. Wherever you want my hand to stop, they can beat a lot of teams on talent. And it's very easy in those moments. The starters get you a 10-point lead early, maybe even more, to celebrate your depth. It's much easier to reach deeper into the bench. And again, injuries. This is, it should be noted, this could easily be Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro minutes if those guys were there too. But given the availability that you have, go get him, Rook. Let's see what Jalen Tyson can do. Give him an opportunity. We love the way you've been playing. We love the way you've been playing on defense. He's doing everything we ask him to do. That's what they say, right? But then it comes time to actually do that on a big stage, regular season, but it's a national TV game, and Kenny doesn't trust him. He doesn't trust him. Easy to say. I'm going to play 10, 11 guys in the playoffs. I'm going to have to. Everyone's playing so well. They've earned it. Well, no, we were talking last night about whether the Cavs might trade Sam Merrill to get under the tax. Okay, that's interesting too. He was great tonight, by the way. I thought Sam Merrill did his job. He was a key part of the comeback, making some timely threes.
And I'm gonna point this out, Jimmy, and I'm gonna let you continue. But like, Jason Tatum had the little boy Sam Merrill. Like, he literally put his hand down to the floor after backing up Sam Merrill and said he's too little. This coming after Jason Tatum had missed 4 or 5 shots in a row. So I think that's like, when we talk, and this is not to get into a Celtics conversation, but like, right, that is everybody calling Jason Tatum soft. That was the softest thing I had seen him do against the Cavs in my tenure of covering the team. Because you're going to tell me that 6'8" Jason Tatum shouldn't bully Sam Merrill, 6'4", who had been bodying you up for the last couple of possessions? All right. Sorry, Jimmy. Go ahead.
That's not a math. That's not like a flex. That's just math. Sam Merrill is literally too small to guard you. But okay, get it off, I guess. But it's just correct. This is what I was talking about. Remember during the regular season when I was kind of making fun of Kumbaya Kenny and saying like, it's everybody's team and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who gets the credit, and it's easy to say that. It's easy to say that before you start playing. It's much easier to say it when you start playing and you start winning. But we're talking about celebrating depth. Against the Celtics, we didn't celebrate as much. There wasn't as much to celebrate, but we didn't dip into the bench as much. We certainly were not empowering Evan Mobley tonight. They tried, and he was trying, he was trying his little pickup moves, like the dribble pickup on his way to the rim on one of those wild drives that he had, and it didn't work out for him. So they stopped empowering him. He, like, again, as I said at the top, literally the fewest amount of minutes he's played in a single digit finish all year. Kenny, I've been saying this for a while. When Kenny talks about George Niang being the best defensive player in a game, or he thinks Darius Garland, he's just praising Darius Garland. It's not because these dudes are going to make an all defense team. It's because Kenny he wants to give them more incentive to keep trying. Okay. They're doing the best they can, but that doesn't mean that they've solved these issues. There's what you say and there's what you do. And Kenny's got caught a little bit in the crosshairs. And I understand maybe Jalen Tyson isn't ready to play against the Boston Celtics on TNT in this kind of spotlight. but we don't know. Basically, that decision tells me one of two things. One, Kenny really, really, really doesn't want to cut into George Niang's confidence. He still thinks he's going to need George Niang in the playoffs, and he needs George Niang to rediscover what he's had for a lot of the year. George Niang's having a really good year in the regular season, so he wants to keep feeding that confidence because it's a regular season game. The result is immaterial, particularly when you're 40-9 going into it. Or Kenny's really confident that Jalen Tyson won't be able to help them in the playoffs, and so what's the point? I think that could have been a valuable learning experience for Jalen Tyson. Maybe he would have looked overwhelmed. You don't have to play him very long. I think you raise a fair point there, Ethan.
And Jimmy, that's the biggest point. We don't know unless you show it to us. We don't, like, Kenny is such an analytically based person. Like, your sample size for Jalen Tyson is, okay, this is what he looks like when we surround him with the veterans, when we have him as a starter, all these great things. This is what he looks like when he's playing in the secondary unit. The secondary unit usually only comes in when they're playing against bad teams that they've already wiped the floor with, right? So you don't have the sample size that you need to have a regular argument of whether or not you can utilize Jalen Tyson in those situations because you simply don't know. There's no data to back it up. But, and Jimmy, you mentioned 2 points that I wanted to cover, talking about how, like, you don't know if Jalen Tyson would have been helpful in the playoffs, right? If Kenny Atkinson doesn't think that they're going to be able to use Jalen Tyson. The other portion is if Jalen Tyson's even going to be here in a couple days, right? Like, if the conversation then turns to the trade deadline and George Niang made this joke at Max Strus's event while they were setting up to take pictures, he was like, okay, only players are allowed to be over here until after Thursday at 3:30 p.m. I was like, dude, like jokingly so, right? But in seriousness, like, that is how kind of divvied up it is right now between everybody noticing what just happened with Luka Doncic, with De'Aaron Fox, with Anthony Davis, and everybody being, not everybody, almost everybody in the NBA not having something that can, like, continuously tie them to an organization. But, like, they don't know what's going to happen in a couple of days. Nobody really knows, other than the people in the organization at the top of the front office. And Kenny Atkinson alluded to it earlier, and I believe that's also a portion of the reason that Chris is not here, because he's chasing a story, is because, like, Kenny Atkinson said that he has to listen to what this team needs from Kobe Altman to figure out how they can get better. To me, Jimmy, and obviously we've seen the stuff on Twitter and X or whatever you want to call it, that there's, like, these rumors that there's a potential trade happening with these different players and all these different things. But the reality of the situation is Kenny Atkinson and this team, and when you ask around the locker room, Jared Allen said it, and then Donovan Mitchell said it. Jared Allen was like, if you do something to these players that are in this locker room, particularly players that have a culture set in this locker room, George Niang being one of those players, you're going to disrupt the chemistry that they have, the camaraderie that is in that locker room. And then Donovan Mitchell didn't want to answer the question. He said, we're fine. We're good. And, like, that's how the interview ended, right? So the tough questions, the tough conversations that we talk about, Jimmy, they're coming. And they're coming sooner rather than later. And that's because of things that are going up around front office. And we talked about this a couple days ago, or even a week ago, when Kenny Atkinson was like, I'm not involved in these talks yet. I'm not involved until it starts getting serious. And I don't know if, I mean, our job is to read body language and mannerisms, but when that question was asked yesterday or 2 days ago, when Joe Varden of The Athletic straight on asked him, like, are you going to make a move? He said, we're going to have to wait and see, basically. And then today, Kenny Atkinson kind of put his head down because he didn't want to answer the question. So, Jimmy, I just want to get your thoughts to wrap up the podcast on what we've seen, what we've heard, and what's going on around the league, whether it's DeAndre Hunter, Cam Johnson, all these different scenarios. I want to get your thoughts to wrap up the episode.
So I would say this, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit tomorrow too. I think chemistry is really important. I think the Cavs have a really good thing going, and I understand the hesitancy to mess with a good thing, right? I think that's an important part of Kobe Altman's job, is to weigh the talent acquisition versus the locker room fit with whoever he might be entertaining. That being said, the worst reason, in my opinion, to pass on a talent upgrade who legitimately boost your chances of winning a championship is because the players will be sad to see somebody go. Can I say both of those things? Can both of those things be true? I think so. This is big. This is a business. It's big boy basketball. This is you've earned the right to make hard decisions, but now you got to make some. I think it's kind of. I don't think I liked Donovan answered that question a little bit differently at shoot around today. He actually answered it. I think still he was a little feeling the little bit of the emotions from that game when he said, we're good. When he was asked about chemistry and the trade deadline and all that stuff. But I just don't, I hope the Cavs are not operating out of fear here. I think a trade, if you believe in a player that can make your team better, do it. And trust that the culture, if the culture is so strong, then it should be able to lose a piece or two and still correct itself. Okay. And if you're trading for a player, well, culture fit should be part of the evaluation, right? You shouldn't be going after a person who doesn't fit your culture. So I think that's just because you lose somebody doesn't mean your culture has to crumble or even get worse. I think the Cavs are winning mostly cures all. And even if they do make a semi-significant move and they would be sad to see somebody go, they would survive.
Right. And that's what Kenny Atkinson said. He said it's got to be a good fit, right? It's got to be a fit not only for the team and how they're going to impact winning basketball games, but it's got to be a good fit for this team in the locker room. And that's why I go to these events for like the players in the community, because you get to know them on more of a personal level rather than just on the court. Because I know we both understand Max Strus is a hardcore winner. He will do whatever it takes. He's a hard ass. He'll argue with referees. We saw it tonight. Like, he will throw people around if he has to. He'll throw an elbow with Kristaps Porzingis, right? But he is, when he talks about family, when he talks about this group, he sounded like the most soft-hearted person that I've ever talked to on this team. And I was like, is this Max Strus? Like, who are we talking to right now? This was a completely different person. And he talked about how this group has become family to him. And I agree with what you're saying, Jimmy. Like, I don't think the Cavs can operate in a sense of fear, but I definitely think like it'll be, and we've seen it with these relationships around the league with trades, like Kyrie Irving talking about Luka Doncic's trade for the first time today and saying like, I lost a brother. I miss my hermano. Like I had to process that. And LeBron James and Anthony Davis, it's a similar situation. So obviously
it might feel like a family. It might feel like a family. It's still a basketball team that's trying to win a championship. This is a business. That's all I wanted to say.
I agree. Wholeheartedly, Jimmy. Wholeheartedly. So the trade deadline is coming up in a couple of days. I got to head over to Detroit tomorrow to watch them play the Pistons. We talked about yesterday how the Pistons have been linked to a lot of different decisions that the teams around the NBA have made this year. We'll have to see if the Cavs are next. But with that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. If we hear anything on the trade docket, on anything going on around the Cavs, this is where you're going to hear it first, even if it's something slight. So to get this information, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.